Now, when it comes to U.S. President Barack Obama's re-election campaign and foreign policy achievements, he's likely to tout the reset of U.S.-Russia relations as one of the big wins. But as 2012 approaches and we see disagreements over missile defense as just one of the roadblocks in relations between the countries, will this kind of real transformation be possible? Well, my guest came here to help me sort it out. Cohen, author and professor of Russian Studies at New York University, also contributing editor at The Nation magazine. Here's part of our conversation earlier.
It goes back to right after the Soviet Union ended. The Clinton administration in the 90s took the view that the United States won the Cold War. That isn't true. Just historically, the Cold War ended before the Soviet Union. But American policy ever since the 90s has been based on the premise that Russia's a weak and defeated nation, and therefore we can have a unilateral or asymmetrical relation. That is, we can demand of Moscow, but we don't have to give. And that's exactly what's happened with the reset, even under Obama, who promised to change policy. What did Russia give Obama, for example? Well, it gave him some cooperation in the Afghan war. Lots of American supplies now go to Afghanistan through Russia. Moscow has helped the United States rein in Iran's nuclear ambitions. Those have been very important things for Obama's foreign policy. But name one thing, and I say this to my friends in the American political class, name one thing of any meaning other than words that Russia has gotten in return that abets, that furthers its own national security. So far as I can tell, nothing. And here's the point. The political class in Moscow understands that. And that's why there's not much support for the reset in Moscow.
Okay, so then why do you think that U.S. policymakers see the policies that they're pushing as being very fair, and why do you think that it's okay for them to still have this language of Russia as the enemy? I mean, even just in a speech that Paul Ryan gave on American exceptionalism, he said, what would we want, a world that's, run by China or Russia? And these are two of the largest investors in the United States. Is that really wise to do?
Every nation has its mindset, and it's shaped by its history. Russians have a mindset that we don't understand. Americans have a mindset Russians don't understand. I grew up in Kentucky, the southern heartland of the United States. This is the way we were raised to think, that America was an exceptional nation, that to the extent that we were involved in the world, it was to lead the world or save the world or guide the world. It's something that's still perpetuated in our textbooks. But in some ways it's not all that important, because great leadership, both in Moscow and Washington, can supersede that. Only 20 years ago, there was a totally unexpected breakthrough by a Cold War American president, Reagan, and a Russian communist, Gorbachev, because they became new thinkers, as Gorbachev said. They transcended the culture and the mentality of their own countries, particularly their own political classes, because I don't think it's the people that are affected by this nonsense, it's the political elites. So the short answer is, what's lacking at this moment in Washington, and I voted for Obama, I'm not anti-Obama, but what's lacking is leadership on the part of President Obama to break with these post-Cold War myths that we can tell Russia what to do, and we can demand from Russia things we are not prepared to give. That's a recipe for more Cold War, and I think Medvedev was right, that we're headed to a new Cold War if missile defense and NATO expansion aren't stopped.
So do you believe that President Obama has what it takes to have the kind of leadership that you say that he needs to overcome some of these roadblocks? And how can he win? For example, the House is controlled by Republicans.
Well, the last question is easy to answer, because an American president, unless it involves a treaty, can make foreign policy on his or her own. I mean, Reagan didn't have much support, even in his own party, for the breakthrough with Gorbachev, but he just believed in it, and he and his ambassador and Secretary of State went ahead and did it. And Obama could do it if he wanted to do it. But I think, A, because he has no people around him who think in a new way about Russia, these are all leftovers from the Clinton administration, that Obama himself may not understand the need for new thinking. But he has the power if he wants to create a new Russia policy.
That was Cohen, contributing editor at The Nation magazine and professor of Russian Studies at New York University.